I can't do anything right on this show, but we got to talk about the Strange New Worlds musical, and it sucks. All this coming up right now on, well, you know, the thing. And welcome to Tuesday Night on a Wednesday on the Writer Brothers. I am your host, Petey York. Howdy, Disney sheepherder. Thank you for hitting the like button and, of course, supporting this channel. And welcome to everybody else joining us. Corione, how are you doing? I'm sorry we missed yesterday, but we're here today.
Tech support issues are tech support issues. There's not much we can do about them, but I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be helping out. And yeah, man, we've got some good topics tonight, actually. We've got, two of the arguably better episodes of Deep Space Nine. We've got Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and, we've got the strangest of Strange New Worlds that we've got to cover. So we've got a full slate tonight.
Yes, and sorry for the sloppy intro, everybody. It has been quite a week if you've been following our content. We've been just having trouble struggling to get any kind of game stream to function, so if we could at least keep the show going and I could still use my rig for work, that'd at least be something, but we're going to find out, and that's why we're here. So hopefully we make it the full 2 hours. If you bet on us to make it the full 2 hours, then I hope you get your money's worth, and if you don't, well, oh boy, we probably just have all kinds of issues. But I'm hoping after some fresh thermal paste on the GPU's CPU and the computer's CPU, well, hopefully smooth things out. I mean, it's definitely, I'm noticing it's flying a lot faster now. So.
Yeah, for the record, I am open to running the pool. We still have many slots open. I am taking the 2 hour mark exactly. As in, as soon as we finish the stream, his computer crashes, but all other spots are open.
Yeah, exactly. So,
all right. So, where in this cornucopia of craziness do you want to start? Do you want to start with the bad news or, the fun news?
Well, what did you have for fun news?
Well, let's start with some of the basics. The Disney earnings call was today, and in it, Iger was asked point blank, after this dismal Disney year, is it possible a tech giant, not naming Apple, but implied, would be purchasing some or part of Disney? And he dodged the question. He didn't say no outright. So this is a very interesting piece, as it's been implied for years that him and former Apple CEO Steve Jobs had talked about doing a lot more merging of the two companies in history. Looks like it might happen now.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely, it's interesting that he dodged the question, because so that means that people who are probably in the know about this are starting to probably drop hints somewhere, whether posting anonymously online or dropping with other sources and whatnot. So it sounds like there's definitely some kind of acquisition or changing of the hands that's going to happen. Whether or not it's all of Disney or portions of it, that's probably what remains to be seen. But Iger not answering the question, while that's not for sure confirmation that Disney's being told, well, here's the thing. Why can't he just say no? If it's not happening, he can say no. Why can't he say no? Because that has potential legal repercussions if it is being sold, or it can torpedo any deals that are actually going on. So of course he has to play the part of, well, I can either confirm or deny what's happening with Disney assets at this time. So as I said, it's very telling in the fact that he doesn't respond to the question, but it also doesn't necessarily confirm anything either. So for all the skeptics out there, you definitely are right to remain skeptical, as am I. Personally, I don't foresee all of Disney being sold to Apple. I don't think Apple has, even in its current state with how Disney is doing stock-wise, I think there's just too many properties for Apple to be able to acquire. Now, I could be wrong. The price of Disney value could be low. But I mean, the thing is, when you're talking about buying Disney, you're not just, if you're talking about buying the brand Disney, you're not just talking about buying Star Wars and Marvel. Okay, you're talking about buying the parks, you're talking about buying the cruise lines, you're talking about buying all the classics that Disney still has locked on. It's not a small purchase. ESPN, ABC, exactly. That's why I think that it's more likely the theories that they might be selling off Lucasfilm are probably what's actually going to happen. Joining us, surprise, after a hard, rough day, just like me, sadly, Pollo Zapatos has decided to come and discuss DS9 Season 3, and I hope that you've got a rant primed and ready for that musical, because I'm gonna have fun. Maybe that's what we should have teased this week, was ranted coming. My rant is gonna be so epic that my computer crashed yesterday, so it couldn't happen. That's why we had to push it off a day. Anyway, Pollo, how you doing, man?
Yeah, definitely exhausted. It's been a day, but
Well, I'm very glad you're here.
did want to show up, show my support, but this was fun. I'm out. Just kidding. No, dude, actually I liked the musical. I love musicals in general, and I was so surprised by everybody's voices. I didn't know they were actually going to be that good.
Well, a lot of them, okay, a lot of them, to be fair, were recorded in the studio and reel-to-reeled afterwards. So there's a fair bit. Oh, I'm just saying there's a lot of studio magic there.
Oh, yeah, no, my rule is as long as your voice is good. And I thought that was pretty great. I did not care for the acapella opening.
Oh, I've got positives and praise because I'm still unbiased. But yeah, it's anyway, until we get there, we are now talking about Iger ignoring the question about Disney or assets of Disney being sold to Apple. I would absolutely love if Apple acquired Lucasfilm. Apple has proven itself with its own original series that it is worthy of any of the legacy IPs. I would be happy if Apple bought Star Trek at this point, because if you guys have not seen Silo, I mean, you could check our reviews on it, and it's all 10 episodes are available for your own viewing. Please, absolutely, if you haven't watched Silo, we still recommend that show. That'll give you some idea of the quality. That plus Severance. Plus, they won Best Picture for Coda, which was well-deserved. They got nominated for Best Picture for Macbeth, which I thought should have won, but either way.
Slaw Horses was
Slaw House, Slow Horses, absolutely. I still haven't watched the second season yet, just because it came out so fast.
Yeah.
Foundation. Season 2 of Foundation is still crushing it.
And you know what? I will say this for Foundation. While I did find some of the execution of that first season to be bad, I will say that their visuals did look very convincing and were pretty realistic for CGI stuff. Some of the best CG out there, along with what we've seen in despite it being bad, Mandalorian Season 3.
Dude,
speaking of that,
I think it is it's section by section. Like, I think each season is each time jump in the books, but rather than each time jump being a chapter, it's a legitimate season.
Yeah, well, the longer the strike goes on, the higher the chance of us coming back to Foundation are going to get, because we're going to need content to cover. So, Corion, you had a thought.
Well, I was going to say, speaking of bad CG, that brings up the kind of bad news, depending on where you sit. Because Disney has apparently been so terrible to its CG people over the last little while, they're voting to unionize. Which is just more bad news for Disney.
Oh, man. I
mean, now, for the record, I have no problem with an organization that has been so beaten down like they have. unionizing just so that they don't get picked on and brutalized as much any further.
But let's analyze that real quick, and let's really just dissect, because I'm not totally against unions either. I'm anti-corruption, and unfortunately, unions can fall under corruption, and when they become corrupt, then I'm anti those specific unions. The concept of a union I agree with because it makes sense, but I think that corporations should make it a point to avoid unionization of any kind, or I've actually seen some corporations that have started to incorporate a union in-house, so to speak, that's specifically designed to try and keep. I think that's typically the way that the military works between its enlisted and officers, and so there's ways to do it that are good. But I would say, as if I was a corporation, I would just make sure my workers are happy and satisfied so they don't unionize against me. Believe it or not, a happy worker is a productive worker. Apparently, a lot of businesses are still having a hard time figuring out this concept. And so instead of trying to just treat people with dignity and respect, we figure out, oh, who's not unionized? Oh, those guys? Oh, we can just take out our anger on them.
Well, I don't even... I feel like unions are a sign of a company that's gotten so big that it doesn't know its people. Like, I feel like every company that I've been at where I've ever heard rumors of unionization, the thing that I've heard it most about is like, I complained about something and then now my hours are getting cut. Yeah. Like, I just had an issue. I told them I'm going to be gone. No, just paid no time, just no unpaid time off. I'm going to be absent in 2 weeks, and I work on a normal team. Like, I'm not even putting extra work on anyone, and yet like suddenly their hours are cut the whole time. Like, it's like, I feel like more than anything, that's just a sign that like the company isn't actually paying attention to its people. And when you're literally like all about art and your artists are all unionizing, and then you're still paying the guys at the top all of this money, like, who's actually doing their job? Like, why does the CEO deserve 250 times the lowest level employees' pay if he can't even keep them from unionizing? Like, they're unionizing because work sucks. And like,
work sucks. They're underpaid. Everyone makes excuses to cut their benefits. And when anybody wants time off, it's like, whether, as you said, paid or unpaid, it's like you're the spawn of Satan for even thinking of wanting time off.
Not to mention, like, one of the biggest things that the writers' strike was talking about was like, we want to be able to write more. We want to be able to be on more shows, to do more work, to be better, like more productive. And they're like, no. Like,
yeah, that's a lot of those old guard.
Weird, hypocritical standard. And like, to me, it's like, they always talk about the shareholders' will. Like, is this truly the shareholders' will?
Depends on the shareholders and how much shares they have.
I know, because like Bob Iger gets half of his salary in shareholder will. Like,
yeah,
I feel like he's literally like that's why I call these companies like Ponzi schemes, the most legal version of a Ponzi scheme, because they're stealing from operations to pay themselves, and then they're like, well, it's the shareholders' will. And it's like, you're the biggest shareholder. 50% of your salary is in shares. The better we do, the more and more you get paid. Like, come on, bud. It's
yep.
To me, it's just gross.
It is, and it's like, this is, again, if you wanted to lead by example, Bob Iger, this was your moment in the sun to truly help set the new way forward. Because the thing is, us working class, working folks, we're done being slaves. Like, a lot of us are opting for the most bare minimum jobs while we pursue our dreams because it's just not worth it. I've gone through the 9-to-5 grind so many times at this point. It felt like a 9-to-5 grind even when I was in the U.S. military, because it's really no different than corporate work. It's the same shit, just different uniform. And I have a life to live. Like, this is the one life I get in this experience. Regardless of what your personal ideology is, when you actually look at things logically and from an unbiased perspective, the way we experience this existence is once, okay? You don't get another chance at this life the way you experience it here. Your memories, your experiences, it's like watching your favorite movie. So even if people are right about an afterlife and we're going to watch what happens, you know, on a screen or whatever, that's not going to feel the same as when you're here in the middle of it. And so people are recognizing they're realizing the value of their own self-worth as humans, and that, as it turns out, oh hey, we all matter and we're all of equal value.
Well, you know, the funny thing is that's the part that I credit people like Bob Iger for, and like, you know, his predecessors, obviously, because like we learned that through film and through entertainment. Like, we watched ordinary people have ordinary romances, and like, you know, we heard all of these things about them being just the American standard. And so that's how we started to imagine our lives to some degree, and started to live our societies to some degree. Like, the movies that didn't stand, usually you weren't a weird family for not liking something. Like, your family was a part of something that made you not like that film or that story. And nowadays, like, most people like a little bit of everything, and that's really cool. But also, like, we're starting to realize, like, we like ourselves too. And like, to all the CEOs and to like all the leaders in charge, like, you guys are literally leading these people.
Right. Well, and that's,
why not turn around and look at where they are standing right now?
Well, yeah, and it also
like,
comes...
I swear, if you just look at, like, even if you just look at your people's homes, most of them can't afford much more than a bread closet with 3 roommates.
Yeah, and it also I lost my thought that I was going to have anyway.
Well, I think it just boils down to
my point there. It's like, even your offices are just boring in most cases. And like, the one thing that a lot of writers and actors are striking for is to get their friends to be able to keep coming back to set.
Yeah.
And that's what you're saying you never want to have to do again, by having them just be snapshotted forever. Yeah. Like, you're literally trying to factory entertainment. And like, I get it, but like, you're not entertaining. None of your films, none of your leaders, quote unquote managers, quote unquote property holders, have done anything quality.
Well, and
this is all degraded comparatively.
Right, and this all just comes down to the simple fact that regardless, it's like, people need to be reminded that participation in society is never required, and that's what a lot of people are waking up to, and that's why everybody's just kind of slowly backing out of the society in their own way. I mean, I'll freely admit, we are trying to be completely independent and self-sustaining and off the grid as much as possible, and, you know, on our own capabilities, whether it be through this show, through my books, through other forms of gig work. But as far as the, you know, standard 9-to-5 economy goes, I'm 100% against it, and I support everybody who wants to get off of it and wants to do the bare minimum, because this society is an agreement. It's an agreement between those who can help provide services with those who help make that possible. And any time that there's a disagreement or a breakdown, like these writers' strikes, these are not localized to that. It's not a simple problem of that. These people are not even striking for the same reasons that they did before. It's honestly the thing that I see consistently from the writers and actors is they just want to be able to live. And they're not even asking for a lot of money. They just want enough to be able to not have to stress living paycheck to paycheck. Like,
yeah, look,
the worst
all
part
of these,
that's the same with all of these unions. And here's the even worst part, is these are the exact same unions that were happening during like the 1920s and the 1820s. Like the steel unions, the anti-monopoly unions, the things that started all of our antitrust laws that are being 100% violated by so many companies. And yet at the same time, like, there's this funny thing, like, apparently reason why...
Anyway, we've got a lot to cover still.
That's right, we do.
So let me just sum this up, because I think this is the one thing we as people can do. The thing about antitrust laws as it goes is it's when the consumers are hurt that's when the courts actually care to step in. That's when people of the court decide to start doing the job, making moves to break these trusts. And guess what, guys? We're hurt. The current quality of the product has been substantially degraded by the monopoly tactics of Disney. And you know, it's really funny because like I don't know how FX and Hulu managed to maintain some autonomy, but whatever they did for Disney and got in their sweetheart deal, because like Futurama is not bad.
No, it's not. It's off to a great start.
That other show remake or reboot was
That was
phenomenal.
also really good.
It was timely. It was everything everybody wanted while simultaneously still being quality writing, like we always said it could be. You know, Orville season 3, Orville season 1 and 2. So
yeah.
like
season 3 shows the show's maturity.
Like that's the team that's gonna get sold to Apple here pretty soon. And Apple, like, I cheer them on. I feel like to me this is like when you become Disney, what you should be doing is just licensing everything. Like you should be handing out all of your IP licenses, like golden tickets to each of these independent studios, like you're doing with the gaming industry now that you closed the monopoly by EA.
Yeah. Corion, you want to have the final thought on the pop culture news before we get to the musical? You're muted.
With all three of the union pieces here, all of it represents a failure to communicate between management and the people actually doing the work. And at the end of the day, the only way any of this is going to get resolved in any sort of positive manner is if everyone is willing to sit down and put on their listening caps for a little while, hear the other side out, make honest, genuine communication possible, and try to figure out what can be done that's best for everybody. And until that happens, we're going to be dealing with this for quite some time.
Yep. All right. I'm not even going to put up the spoiler tags because we don't need them.
So we're going to do the musical right now?
It's pretty much straightforward. Well, I'm going to let John go first and then...
Hold on. Before you guys do, I have something special. If you could please put up the shared screen here.
It's all you.
Warning. Incoming rant. Warning. Incoming rant.
Go for it, my man.
Speaking of reboot,
I had that saved up just for you guys.
John, why don't you go first? Because then I can think about why your opinion is different from mine.
Actually, can I do the positive stuff before you
I'm gonna do positive stuff before I start ranting.
Okay, all right, then go for it then. Go for it.
Okay. So to me, I'm just gonna tell people where I'm coming from. I loved Glee when I watched that, and I watched it like old. So like my love of musicals is purely just musicals in general. I love a cappella. I love all the Pitch Perfects. For me, this episode just hit it in every single way. Like one of the things I love about musicals, especially like musical episodes and serious episodes, is that like it acknowledges all of the television. Like we know that there's drama, right? And we know that in that drama, there's just so much writing, and it is theater. And so when you do a musical episode, you literally put the theater on full display, and you test the chops of all your actors, and I love it. Like at one point, I was 90% sure one of the Disney princesses was singing for La'an. Like her song was awesome. But I will say, like, my one disappointment, like, overall was, like, the Klingon bridge. I hated that. One, it was so off-key. Two, it was way too abrupt. and 3, like the drop sucked. Like it should have been
We're actually in
whoa,
more of an agreement than we realize, but I will get into my bit
and like
in a second.
especially like if they both went red alert and it like actually had a dirty bass drop for a few seconds, but instead it was like and I was like,
Instead, it was some of the most embarrassing seconds of Star Trek history, but I will get into that after Corione gives his 2 cents, and then H. Marie, and then me. Muted yourself again.
Yeah. All right. So here we go. Last week, if you'll recall, I laid out the rules for a musical. The things that had to happen, the things that were supposed to go down in order for it to actually be a successful musical. And what do you know? The episode was about the rules for a musical. So they actually hit on the stuff that I was saying, which I appreciate. I know I'm probably in the minority here, but I thought the a cappella version of the theme was kind of cute and clever. It wasn't necessarily good, but it was cute that they went for it.
It was kitsch.
Yeah, it was kitsch, right? And I don't mind the odd little bit of kitsch.
I would have preferred a choir to a cappella.
Fair enough. The things that drove me nuts,
like a Halo intro.
Okay.
I'm gonna break my neck from agreeing with that one so hard.
Okay, but that all being said, look, I have zero problem with, one-off musical entries in a series if they're done right. And here's the other component that absolutely, in my opinion, needs to be there. The actors are singing it on stage. Okay? I got very, very annoyed that they did it as back roll, which is basically they sung it in a sound studio to make sure it was absolutely perfect with studio magic, and then played that over, like did it as a voiceover basically on the actual episode. I'm not a fan of that because it's very difficult then to tell whether it's actually the actors singing chops or whether it was studio magic that made them sound good. And I am concerned that for several of the actors, it was the studio magic that was doing it, not them. And if you can't bring it in a musical, then do exactly what they did in the Buffy musical, where they had, Willow's character? I can't remember who the actress, Allison Hannigan. Have Allison Hannigan sing exactly one line because she cannot sing worth a damn otherwise. So have her in like the most minimal thing and let the rest of them who actually can sing, who are triple threats, let them go ahead and do their thing. I thought the dance parts were fairly well choreographed, but they felt clunky. This is not a set that's designed for dance-offs, right? And as for the Klingon piece of it, just no. Listen, you could have had the Klingon sing. You could have had the Klingon sing amazingly because what you do is you do it as Klingon opera. If you had done it as a Klingon freaking opera section, I would have been like, yes, this is what we want. This is what we need. This is how in their culture they would have sang it, which would have made it perfect. But instead they turned it into like, I don't know, something that I would expect from Hamilton. And that was just not, Hamilton is not Klingon culture, right? So it doesn't work for me. That being said, look, it was funny as a one-off. I will probably never watch this one again because none of the songs actually caught me and wanted me to be like, there are some show tunes that I will listen to again and again and again. I have the We Will Rock You soundtrack in my car.
Sit down, John.
Right. But like I have the We Will Rock You soundtrack in my car. I routinely listen to Man of La Mancha. It's one of my favorite musicals. I actually acted in it at one time. So, I'm the Sean Bean of musical theater. But anyway, the idea is that, you know, like this was okay, but is not something I want to see revisited ever, because it was just not done great, and it had the potential to be great, but didn't achieve it.
H. Marie, go for it.
Oh Lord, well you caught me while I was looking something up, but fine. So actually, to elaborate a little bit on Corion's point of them recording in the studio, you could actually see, unfortunately, who was actually attempting to sing while they were actually singing, and then you can see those who were not, and those who actually could sing. You can see the difference. It was very kind of distracting almost, because you could see they'd miss their cues just a little bit, and some of the voices just didn't quite match up. Like, you could definitely tell there was a lot of auto-tuner. The dancing was, it was all, I was half expecting like a rumble to break out at some point, with how they were acting, and I don't know why they chose a K-pop boy band for Klingons. I mean, I guess they could still call it Klingon pop, call it K-pop, but that's not their kind of music. That's not what they listen to. The episode was just, I like musicals. I thoroughly enjoy musicals. I grew up on Yul Brynner's The King and I grew up Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. Yeah. I grew up with all sorts of different musicals, and I absolutely love them, and this just didn't quite hit the mark for me. Some of it was creative, but it's just not for me. It's going to be, you know, there's always that one episode you skip in the season, and well, this is it for me.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely, so this would have been fine if we had 20 episodes. This would have been fine if it was better. I probably wouldn't have, I'm never going to watch it again regardless, but I probably wouldn't have hated on it as much. Now, keep in mind, I do like musicals too. We've actually talked about a couple on this show. 1776 is one of my absolute favorite that I think would have been a good inspiration for this particular idea, because it does a fantastic job of having its fun, cringy, you know, it's got a couple of songs in there that I'm always like when Jefferson's Wife is singing, that one's a rough song, and then the other one with about Lee's ancestor, General Lee's ancestor, I believe, is also pretty cringe because the character is like a cartoon while everybody else is somewhat serious congressmen. And other than that, though, the rest of the movie does a great job of actually showing the debate of the Declaration of Independence, and ends, you know, in a very solemn note, like just how real things were about to get when they were signing it and the bell was tolling. And that is what I was hoping we were gonna more or less get with Strange New Worlds. And we didn't. I actually did like the first half. I thought, this is actually going in a direction that shows promise, that could actually work. And then we got to Spock's song, I'm the X. And it was more or less downhill from there for me, which is too bad because I really liked Uhura's follow-up song about what she does on the ship, and I thought it was a pretty good number. It just, I was so turned off because Spock by this point, first of all, I've made the excuses for Strange New Worlds and how they've treated Spock, and I've been okay with some of their explanation. I'm now no longer accepting their version of Spock. This version needs to be much more closely inspired by the Nimoy Spock and heading to that direction, regardless of if this is an alternate timeline or not. Because, as we've seen in the Mirror Universe, Vulcans don't really change a whole lot, personality-wise. So even with it being an alternate universe, we still need to kind of have the original Spock. So what I think would have enhanced this episode is if Spock had been singing at first, but then by his song, it was going to be more spoken word, and it should have been more spoken word, and it should have been more sophisticated, like, you know, putting a lot of big boy words in there and rhyming with various things and phrases that would confuse your average audience member, because he's a Vulcan. He's logical, he's pragmatic, and by the time he gets to the last number, he should maybe be backing people up with his harp and humming. Why? Because we need to start seeing his discipline as Vulcan disciplines start to come back. And I think this would have been an excellent episode to show that, yes, The Spock you know and love is more or less starting to become him because he's resisting the effects of the improbability field. Which brings me to my first big problem with this episode is the plot device that was so weakly used to make all of this cringe possible. Scrubs did it better. Scrubs clearly knew how to get the musical concept into the universe without breaching too much of the show's established lore by having one of the patients perceive it. If there had been some kind of different explanation that made more sense as to why everybody was behaving on a character besides, oh yeah, there's probably a musical universe that exists out there and some of it is affecting us through our sensors because we fired a thing into another thing which created the improbability field. Yeah, you guys, you clearly just wanted an excuse to make a musical, and that's clearly what you wrote on a Sunday afternoon and didn't bother fleshing out the plot device, because what was more important is getting Spock to sing I'm the X. Not, and then of course Klingons, doing K-pop. Because, haha, funny. Watching warriors do frickin' hilarious stuff like that is funny, isn't it right, guys? No, it's not. It was disgraceful, it was stupid, it was lore-breaking, it was bad.
Here's the saddest part. I don't think that was K-pop. I'm pretty sure that was like pretty modern day or current day rap, which like they consider to be like gangster and like hard. And like the modern day rap, aside from like a few of them, most of them are like graduating high school and making money because their SoundCloud finally took off. And like they have all the money to do what we're doing just with music. And they have the lyrics.
Everything that it was like once we had the Spock song, then we had a Horus, and then from there for me it was just it was starting to snowball.
I feel like they actually earned the Spock song in terms of one, they set the rule that the music was in heightening emotion, enhancing emotion, and like forcing the emotional person to sing it out. And one thing Spock has quoted every single him as being a key component episode is that Vulcans don't have zero emotion, they have full control over their exacerbating emotion. So like if the music thing, and I will give you it is a MacGuffin, but a lot of Star Trek is.
A lot of Star Trek is, but there's a difference between a MacGuffin that works and crap. This falls under absolute crap.
I think you're frustrated at the whole I'm an X song, but I think it was like awesome because to me, one of the things I loved about this song or the whole like score was that I was really getting Panic at the Disco vibes, which I do love. Emo punk as like a rock reference, and so when he's saying I'm an X, I was thinking of Panic at the Disco, and the whichever one sings and the poor groom's bride is a whore. Somebody should, or I chimed in, you should have closed the goddamn door. That one.
Oh, that's I know the band. They're actually very local to me. It's
Thanks for the Memories, I believe, is the name of the song.
Yeah, I gotta find the band.
Right. There you go. I'll just have my human Shazam that for me. But it's not Fall Out Boy. But like to me, like that is like what was being channeled, and like I really felt that like younger millennial sound like coming out throughout all the songs that I really enjoyed.
It would have been fine to keep the style of the song. I'm saying that the execution of how he was going about the words, like this was the moment to show us Spock becoming Spock again.
Singing with like all of the Spock words, and he was nailing it. I loved it so much. Like he was like trying to report the problem, but he couldn't stop singing.
The thing is, though, that's not even the problem. Is that wasn't the song? That was just the beginning. The song itself was but like I said, I think the handling of Spock, not by the end of the song, by the end of the episode, having mastered control of his emotional state and overcome the overwhelming push from the improbability field, that would have, one, been in perfect character with Nimoy's Spock, because that's totally what Nimoy's Spock would have done in this situation. And two, it would have also shown that the writers do care about lore and that they're pushing it. And instead, we get articles in other tabloids about how, oh, this isn't Nimoy's Spock. It's totally different Spock. And I'm like, then what's the point of me watching this show? Like, I can justify and excuse a different telling and character tweaks and maybe doing some risky things with characters for a minute. But it gets to a point where it starts to turn into cultural vandalism, where it starts to turn into Starship Troopers. And that's what I feel like S&W is now starting to slowly seg back into, is disrespecting the lore.
Slowly seg back into, this was one episode out of 9. Like,
Yeah.
they hit all of
Billy
the markers
Talent
for every other episode.
Sorry, say again, Corio?
I think Billy Talent is who you guys are thinking of,
Oh, okay.
band-wise.
Yes, maybe.
Yeah.
I remember. But no, like, Parker, this is 1 out of 9. I think in this instance, like, 1, I kind of feel like they are doing Nimoy's Spock some justice.
Oh, not in this
Like-
episode at all. Not at all.
No.
In this episode, it was
No,
disgraceful.
I mean in the series overall.
No,
like,
they're
one of the
trying,
big
but they're
things-
also missing the mark in a lot of areas, too.
So far, you've praised it every episode until this one, and now you're going back and saying it didn't do so well before.
Now, I'm
Like, I
saying
do
that
see
it
the
hasn't
thing, like-
quite hit the mark.
Right, but also
It
this
was
happening-
starting to, and that's what I was getting at, was that
But
we
you
were
have to
getting
remember,
there.
like, Nimoy's Spock was also written in a very stoic period for a very stoic audience versus like today's audience is more into the character development with actual character drama. Not to mention they were honest enough to go back and pick young Spock, right? And same thing like they're doing with young Kirk. And like they're changing Kirk's backstory, like we're literally watching them do it in front of us and we're completely ignoring it because they're doing it gracefully. And I think like that's what the Spock experience is they're like, this is how much we're changing Kirk as well.
I appreciate what you're
And then we
saying, but what I'm
bring
saying
him back.
is if the goal of Strange New Worlds was to try and get away from Discovery, it was doing a great job until this episode. And
Right, but I say give it a chance for number 10.
no, I'm gonna watch episode 10. I'm not done with the show
No,
because of
I'm
this.
not saying.
I'm just saying we're back to where we were with season 1. We're missing the mark.
I think that's such a harsh drop. I could see you dropping it to like, giving this one like a 3 or a 2, and then
That's because
still
you've got to
overall-
understand, we're disrespecting not just Spock in this episode, we're massively dishonoring the Klingon Empire, and we're also just disrespecting most of the rest of the crew as a whole because, well, we're just making them sing and do dance numbers on a set that, as Corione said, just doesn't work for that. Like, it's, like I said, if we had gone more 1776, which, you know what 1776's strength is? They wrote the musical to fit the set of the period. So that's why we don't have extravagant, flying from the ceiling and, all kinds of air acrobatics, because that's not the mood that we're going for. And that's what I'm saying is, like, this is from the perspective of all the Legacy fans that I talk to. Like, I give them the win on this for hating this series and hating all of New Trek this week, because it's well deserved. Everything that they complain about, everything that the S&W writers have said that we're improving from, they just basically rolled back on. So yes, John, I know it's a harsh drop, but that's my point. It's a harsh drop because of how many steps we took back in this episode when we had shown proper development. Go ahead, Corio.
Okay, guys, I get where you're coming from, but I have a bit of an assignment for you guys that I think makes the one redeeming quality of this episode that we can take from it. If you were going to write a Star Trek musical, how would you do it?
I want to get to that in a second.
Okay.
But I want to talk about what really killed it. So, John, Spock's number would have bothered me, and we would be talking a different conversation. But it's for me, the reason why it's such a harsh drop is adding everything up to the. Oh God, that last number was so awful for many reasons, okay? First of all, the premise was ridiculous in that, okay, we need to get the resonance up. Okay. Epic, Klingon opera, German metal, space battle. Okay? I would have loved this episode if we had gone full send, snakes on a plane, like we're just balls to the walls, we're pulling out all the stops. And so, while we have our contemporary musical parts leading up to this,
This is the one time where these...
Please stop interrupting. I'd like to actually get a rant out. This was the moment where we should have just put the cherry on the top. We should have made it count. Because if it had been this cheesy, if we had gone this ridiculous, I have a feeling a lot of Legacy fans would have watched it and probably been amused and appreciated it for the same reason people watched Snakes on a Plane and appreciated it, that it was so absurd and yet so memorable. People still talk about Snakes on a Plane today. I'm not going to be talking about the Strange New Worlds musical except to acknowledge that it exists and move on with my life. That's my problem here, is I wanted to like this and it fucking failed. Hard. Everything about that last number is so bad. From the whole, I like Uhura's speech in the beginning, but then it's like, crew, we gotta keep singing because we don't have enough. Okay, you know what would have gotten you there? Shooting at the Klingons. Letting them engage in Klingon opera instead of Klingon boy band crap. That would have been a much better alternative. So there's your answer, Corione. A better musical would have been epic Klingon opera space battle. Spock is getting control and he's able to overtake the improbability field's hold over him, so he's not singing, but he doesn't get complete control, so he has to hum. So he has to find an outlet. But that would have shown that we are not only, we're having fun with a musical, which we did, but we're also still respecting the lore and we're still trying to get to that. And we didn't have any of that, and that's my problem, John, is it was a complete erasure of all the progress that Strange New Worlds was actually making to honor what TOS is, and yet it feels like we hit the reset button. But that's it. We've got episode 10 tonight. So we got that to look forward to.
Can I put forward how I would have done a musical?
Oh, please do. And then John, I'm sure you've got your thoughts to improve it, even though you liked it.
Okay. So the episode starts with Pike saying something along the lines of, because of the pending Gorn threat, they're trying to shore up the relationship with the Klingons. So they've agreed to some sort of cultural exchange where they're going to be going to a Klingon opera. Okay? And in order to help them deal with this, they've brought on this specialist who happens to be from a psychic species, who's going to be kind of, taking them through what to expect in this opera. When they bring him on board, there's some sort of transporter accident or screw up between him and the Klingon ambassador, or the Klingon primary actor who's been sent to, bring the Enterprise over to the world where this is going to be put on. So now what is happening is it's become kind of a psychic earworm virus where everybody is going to be singing because that's how the actor is thinking, because Klingon actors are super method or something. Okay? Would be really cute. Now, we then have a play within a play going on where we can have Akfu and Melota, one night only kind of thing, where they're going to this play and we still get the musicals. I would have Spock be the only member of the crew that doesn't sing at all. He's just so logic focused at this point that's, he doesn't sing and everyone else is weirded out because of it. Until maybe the last number and he just pours his freaking heart out in this unbelievable explosion of emotional singing, which would have been great. I would not have had as much dancing. If I was going to have Klingon singing, I would either have them sound like the Mongolian heavy metal band The Who, okay, HU, or I would have had them played by the guys from Rammstein, who would have been freaking amazing looking in Klingon outfits, and they wouldn't have even minded, I'm sure. Right? But like have them look like literal heavy metal rockers from the grave kind of thing. Would have been great. Okay? If you're going to do anything involving spaceships at all, do not have them look like they're dancing. Okay? If you're going to have anything like that, have it be starfighters on parade doing intricate maneuvers, and have it have a musical background that reminds you of Top Gun. Right? Could have been really good. But that's how I would have done this, is put it in a play within a play kind of context, have it make logical sense in that like this is some sort of psychic phenomenon as opposed to some weird spatial nonsense. That's like, you know, a threat across subspace to everyone who communicates. It sounds a little techno-virusy for me when we could have had it be a transporter accident / psychic phenomenon, which I think would have made more logical sense. I also think if you're going to include the Klingons in something like this, you got to include some Klingon culture and music for it to make logical sense.
Yeah, I had someone on Twitter make the point. It was like, well, the music that they sent into the improbability field was the American Rhapsody or what are the American
Bandstand,
whatever. And I was like, so okay, so the improbability field, which is, you know, shamelessly lifted from Douglas Adams, it has specific rules now? Is that what you're gonna tell me? You're gonna argue this stupid plot device has specific? No, wrong. It would have gotten to the Klingons and it would have lifted the Klingon music up. It wouldn't have forced them to, you know, freaking do K-pop and American human music. Like it's
because, like, this is assuming that Klingons dream in English.
I'm just saying, we've never truly appreciated Gangnam Style until we've heard it in the original Klingon.
Aw, dude. Okay. You know, I actually have an open Klingon style. Like, you know that, right? Like, I do have the music video for that.
Oh, I've watched it and I was like, you put too much work into this, but...
Yes.
Oh, wait, you have one yourself?
No, well, no, not me.
Oh. All right, John, now that you've heard our complaints and our suggestions, what are your thoughts? And I want to be clear, I'm not giving up on Strange New Worlds. I have high hopes, but even higher expectations for Season 3. But no, I'm excited for Episode 10 to get back to, you know, serious Trek. And I'm not done with the show. I'm just saying that that's how much of a blow the musical did to me, and it was very. But I've now ranted on the internet like a normal, healthy human does, so I'm ready to move on. But I would like to hear your response, and then we'll of course get on to Guardians of the Galaxy.
I mean, okay, yeah, like the hindsight being 2020, there's always woulda, coulda, shoulda done better, and like. I do like your guys' ideas. I do think that obviously the Klingons was a missed point. I mean, if you're going to bring them in, it's space. You have lasers, laser explosions. Like, just do a training montage for the Klingons pulling out.
You've inspired an idea that I've got to share right now. You know what would have made me love this episode? Is if they show up in formation, laser light show with their disruptors, and then the lead Klingon captain comes on, and he's singing a Klingon version of "Comfortably Numb" by Pink Floyd.
Dude, and not to mention, they're using their invisibility cloaks in syncopated dance routines because he's the admiral. Like, he has that much authority to control and command that many ships. Like, yeah, and this is what I mean. Like, there's the woulda, coulda, shouldas. And obviously we're hearing about Disney is, you know, one of the studios isn't paying their CG enough. So you gotta assume all of them are toting thin lines or close to the bottom line, you know? So we got what we got, and that to me is like, that's why I don't like the whole idea of being like, it could have been better. Like, yeah, a lot of things could have been
not could have with this one. It should have. I'm like harsh on this was a huge miss mark and opportunity all around.
you despised it. I didn't
I'm
despise
not the only
it.
one.
Corion didn't despise it. Like,
I'm
I
here
do
also more or
understand-
less representing a lot of the other diehard Roddenberry fans that I've talked to and have expressed similar anger. But even not even just
Sure,
them.
but-
I've also had a lot of New Trek fans recognize that the Klingon thing was a huge missed mark, and that's what's really killing it. There's some that
but
loved
I already
it,
acknowledge
but-
that. That's what I'm saying. Is like, yes, there's. Again, you like it should have been better.
it's creating a polarizing opinion, and I think that's what really speaks to the product. Is if it's a polarizing opinion, you know, in a way that Galaxia might
Yeah, but
inspire polarizing
it's a
opinions on agreeing
polarizing
with.
opinion on a musical episode. Like, it's the same as like having a polarizing opinion on a Christmas episode or a Thanksgiving episode. Like, we skip those inherently.
I mean, but people do those things and expect them in the shows. That's the difference. Whereas with this, it was like it was totally unnecessary. But you know what?
Well, to me, okay, here's my one last point on the whole thing. Like with the Spock bit, it's like they have been getting so good at actually making Spock more, you know, original. But they needed a couple more excuses to flesh out the feelings lines. And like I feel like this is where they took the liberty, and I'm glad they did, because I don't want episode 10 to be Spock confessing something big and it only have been he left his fiance and now he's in love with Nurse Chapel entirely, and then Nurse Chapel dies, or vice versa.
Oh, that's not
or
going to happen. Maybe, I don't know.
Honestly, what I think needs to happen in this next episode is Chapel needs to leave the ship and Spock go full Vulcan, shut down emotionally, become
Right,
the
and I
stoic
think-
man that we want.
I
him to
really
be.
don't want that to be
That's
his
what I've been
inspiration
seeing
for
from
that,
the
but
writers, though.
I
Well,
mean,
no, that's what I'm saying is we actually have. There's been a lot of tests against Spock's Vulcanness over the entire season, and he's only gotten more assertive and more like self-understanding, so that like by the time he is first officer to Captain Kirk, it makes complete sense, like where he has a good understanding of what it means to be human. And that's why we have Star Trek 2, where we had to go grab Spock back to life, and he had to re-understand what it meant to be a human. Or 3. So like we needed that in TOS because we never understood how Spock could perfectly be both. And now with TOS, episode 3, we got that, but then here we're also getting it in Strange New Worlds rather than Spock dying and restarting. Instead, we're getting like, no, he learned that in Starfleet too. He wasn't perfect, and like you have 2009 where he was like, again, also
2009 is its own timeline.
No, I know, but like these are all the comparisons in different levels of Spock, and the one that we've got right now is very much between 2009 Spock and TOS Spock, but within time. Like he's young. He's technically like what, 20, 25?
I would have to actually look that up now that you mention it. I'm a
Right?
ship guy. Calm down. All right. I think we've said all we need to. I'm done with this. I don't want to talk about the musical now or ever again, except to say that I don't want to talk about the musical now or ever again. With that, we decided to pick up a movie this week, and I'm glad we did, because Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is quite a film. I absolutely enjoyed this. I'm going to keep the general discussion up, so spoilers if you haven't seen it. It's streaming now on Disney Plus and has been for like 2 weeks now, so if you didn't catch it in the theater, you didn't catch it on streaming, and you haven't caught it yet and don't want it spoiled, this is probably where you might want to turn the broadcast off. But if you don't care, and you want to hear us talk about a film that turned out to call out a lot of religious tropes while simultaneously being a very wholesome pro-life movie by the end, then absolutely stick around. But let's go around the room. John, why don't you go first?
Oh, well, dude, I like the way you put that. Like, calling out a lot of religious tropes, and I really love that. Like, one of the biggest like religious tropes I felt like that was called out in this one was like the the idea of like, if there's no God, I'm going to be God. And this like idea of the pursuit of perfection. Like, the only standard of perfection he had ever thought possible seemed to be like genetic diversity and like some form of like I don't know, like, because he didn't seem to have a problem with like short lives or long lives or non-sick lives, but like he hated any form of social barbarism, period, to the point that like he was nuking it, which is like one of the most common tropes attributed to like the biblical God, is that like he just nukes the world whenever he wants to. And it's like really cool to see that in a movie. Like, what would that look like? How would he have gotten there? How would he have justified that? And you look at this guy as he does it, and you're kind of like, yeah, I mean, he is like fully adulting these people, like instantaneous adult. But they did have kids, so like he's definitely an angry God. But so like I really like that. Like, I really like that trope being visualized. And then also like his biggest fight was like, I need perfection in the imperfect mind. Like, the thing he hated most was that like Rocket was just smart. Like, and he had like the mental creativity given to him by his friends, the challenge to imagine better. And because of that imagination, he was like, well, I'm also a genius. And just started imagining it all times, which is funny because that's how like, it's really cool because like that's how Nikola Tesla was described as doing it. He just saw the right answer and then worked it out from there, worked it backwards, took it apart, put it back together, took it apart, put it back together until it was perfectly efficient in his head. And then like, I bet you 100%, if he had like access to modern tools, like if he was in an Ace Hardware, he could do the rocket twisting something together, And it felt cool. Loved it. It was a really fun movie. Made me cry a little bit a couple times towards the end. It was sweet.
All right, Corione, what are your thoughts?
So I did do a video on this already. About
all right, Ace Marie, go ahead.
But I thought, this was the perfect way to end this chapter of the Guardians of the Galaxy. This was absolutely the kind of ending that every character deserved in the piece. And so the theme of moving on, I felt, was perfect in this. I will say that the reason I think why Rocket was the genius that he was is because he was imperfect, right? Perfect creatures don't have to be creative. And that was what the evolutionary didn't understand. That Rocket needed to have just enough adversity to become creative to solve problems. Just enough, right? And that's exactly what we got with Rocket. I love the characterization of Rocket throughout this. I love that he had a family. That we never knew about this family until now because it was too painful for him to talk about, right? I love that he didn't like being called rodent or raccoon or anything because he didn't know that's what he was. And now he knows, right? I thought that the only piece that I thought was kind of a little hackneyed for me was the saving of the animals on board the ship, like that was a priority. I personally thought that was a little cheesy. And like, I wasn't sure if they were trying to send some sort of weird PETA message there, but
well, it would have been
no. Like, I wasn't sure if that was the intent.
No, I would say that one was perfectly written because it was then after Rocket got back to his cage and remembered that, like, especially after he didn't even notice all the other animals until after he grabbed all the other raccoons and was like, I'm saving them, but not them. How do I justify that? And then
Right, and
everybody on Nowhere was like, I thought we were keeping it to higher life forms. And he's like, yeah, me too. So it wasn't PETA. Because everybody was like, we could have left him.
You know what? At the same time, a bunch of fresh
No,
steaks
like,
just climbed on board,
I'm
so there
just-
is that.
Yeah, and three
Well, yeah,
Albatross.
Yeah, but like I'm just saying, like I wasn't sure about that, and it felt a little hackneyed there. But I did like the concept of this. I liked that the way that they introduced everybody. I liked that the way they characterized the High Evolutionary. I loved the scenes with Peter and Gamora interacting, because it really felt like, you ever had that ex that you just couldn't let go of? That's exactly what that was. But eventually he does come to reconcile with it, and we get the best possible ending for those two given the circumstances. And that was wonderful, right? We literally got everybody's best possible ending given the circumstances. Everybody got family. Everybody got closure in their unique arcs. We got to see Drax in his true purpose, what he's really actually good at. Because he's kind of meh at everything else. But being a father, he's fantastic at. Right?
Which I think is awesome, because that was the beginning of his story originally, too. He didn't get Drax the Destroyer on accident. He got it in Payback, chasing down Thanos.
That's it. Right? We got, like I said, every character up to and including Mantis got a quality ending for them. And the fact that they've, strongly hinted that Peter Quill is, like, Star-Lord is now going to be available, on Earth should the Avengers, wind up getting another movie, I thought was a great idea, right? Like, look, they handled it solidly. The concept that they were playing with, that they were basically going to be, filling out everyone's backstory, or like finishing everyone's story arcs by telling Rocket's backstory, and highly implying that this entire trilogy has been about Rocket and not necessarily about anyone else, was kind of a cute idea, right? At the very least, from Rocket's perspective, it has all been about Rocket. And I think that works really well. So, all in all, I thought it was a fantastic movie. I think it's worth taking your kids. I know my 11-year-old absolutely loved it. She thought it was great. She thought, the scary parts were appropriately scary, but not so scary. The emotional parts trigger on all the right heartstrings. It's a solid movie. Look, James Gunn did not release a stinker for Guardians. This is no exception.
Yeah.
James Gunn is definitely, like, of all of the theater, like, of all the major writers, the ones that have gotten the most crap. Like, James Gunn, didn't he have a major scandal for a while?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, and like, he still stayed true to his, like, ability. He's actually a good writer or good director, and puts out quality content that actually is cohesive throughout. Like,
yeah.
Marvel really missed a beat when they decided to put him on Guardians, and then also lose him to DC. He saved Suicide Squad.
Yeah, let's let H. Marie get her in, and then of course, I got some points to make off of that.
Yeah, this movie hit really, really heavy for me. I don't usually tear up or cry at movies necessarily, and this one, it had me going. I had the lump in my throat, especially the scenes with his friends in the cages. That just destroyed me, and the fact that they were just so close to seeing, the fresh air and everything. I was like, ouch. But it hit so hard, but I enjoyed it. I don't know if I'll watch it again anytime soon necessarily, but I'd probably watch it again in like another year or two, but I need a break because that just it was too heavy for me. I can't sit through that too many times in a row.
Yeah. All the Guardians movies, it's like I might be able to watch them once every 5 years, because they are good, but they're just a little too good, I guess you could say. I really like that this movie explained and finally quashed the multiverse means no mistakes myth, which is the people who of course came up with that clearly don't understand how multiverse works. No, just because you find your counterpart in a multiverse does not mean that if you die in your universe that you could just be replaced by the multiverse. That's exactly what this movie did a great job of showing with Gamora and Peter's interaction, was that no, Gamora is dead. She's not coming back. This Gamora is not the same, and she's obviously happy with where she's at in life because she doesn't have the years of experience that the Gamora of this time had. So I thought that whole thing was great, not just as a getting over the ex that got away, but also recognizing that just because it's multiverse doesn't mean it's without consequence, because it's not. Other than that, yeah, everything else about it was great. This is basically, if you're a Christian, you got offended by this movie, it's probably because you're clinging too close to the message. The whole point is to show the mentality of somebody who believes that there is no God, so they decide to be God, and in doing so, they think they're supposed to strive for perfection, when in the end it's just nuance, and he couldn't even create nuance. Like, I literally felt like this was an allegory, like if Satan had usurped God successfully, to be perfectly honest. That's what I thought he was going with. But all the metaphor was there. What happens to the creatures that they don't need anymore? They get incinerated. They burn in hell, so to speak. And then when he leaves the planet that he created, the second Earth, or counter Earth or whatever, and blows it up, yeah, it's all fire and brimstone. Horrible things that, in the grand scheme, if they're going to happen, they're going to happen regardless of what we do about it. So why would you want to wish that? Yeah, because I don't. That's why I kind of moved on from the post-apocalyptic idea of Christianity and have just accepted that I live here. If the world ends in my time, great. But until then, I'm going to focus on the things that matter, like this show and getting to know people and just generally not being a dick. Everything else, though, like I said, I did like, it made sense getting all the animals out, because Rocket was getting the raccoons and realized that would he be able to live with himself if he didn't at least try to get the rest of the animals out. And of course the rest of the crew was like, are we taking on these animals? I thought it was just people. And nope, it's everybody's going ashore at this point, which I thought it was fine. It made sense. James Gunn did a good job of explaining the thought process and the mentality and the logic behind it. And yes, he's still a very talented writer. I still love Peacemaker, and that one just shows for itself. So yeah, I definitely recommend Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is absolutely a great movie, along with all the other two Guardians movies. This is a fantastic trilogy, and I agree. It ends well. We don't necessarily need more Guardians movies after this, but yeah. Those are basically any further thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy 3, or
Cosmo is a good dog no matter what anyone says.
Oh, well said.
Yeah. Well, one final thought is, I think if they are gonna bring back the Avengers in any way, Peter Quill is finally character developed enough to take on the Captain America Tony singular leader of the Avengers role. Mostly because like every human threat they face, he's like, nah, I've seen this before at a bar on such and such planet. Like, yeah, technically this one's gone rampage and we gotta take care of it, but like, trust me guys, the rest of his race are cool. This is just one medium. And we have that explain away while simultaneously, like, we can have crazy threats again. But you lost James Gunn, and I mean, he even though they lost him because like they pushed him out, he still gave them a perfect exit. Like, that's called exiting with class, because DC is about to explode, regardless of the fact that like they're using the worst characters of the DC catalog to decide to like start this whole DC franchise with. James Gunn could make it work. I mean, he made Suicide Squad work after Birds of Prey, so.
Yeah, I mean, look, Blue Beetle is going to be the real first, honestly, litmus test to see whether he can pull something together here. Because Blue Beetle, while not a huge DC draw, he still has a loyal freaking fan base to him. And if he can pull it together and turn Blue Beetle into like the POV character inside the Justice League for us, that could work.
Yeah,
Right?
no, that definitely could. That definitely could. All right, well, I think we've said all we need to. We clearly like Guardians of the Galaxy 3 a little bit more than we like the Strange New Worlds musical. Moving on to, speaking of better Star Trek, Deep Space Nine. We're at the end of the line, the end of Season 3, the end of Roddenberry Trek as a whole, in my opinion, because next week we need to watch Star Trek Generations before we dive into Season 4. A lot of, excuse me one sec. Important plot points that take place that we need to get into. But we have a couple of episodes. I'll get the plot summary going up. But John, what did you think of the last 2 episodes and Season 3 as a whole? You still enjoying this? Is this worth your time?
Yeah, a lot of fun. I don't know. It's, I'm glad I'm definitely watching this. I'm definitely surprised by how Season 3 ended versus the first 2 seasons. So, kind of excited for Season 4, but I don't know. Are you guys enjoying watching it again as well?
I am. You know, I routinely do a rewatch Deep Space Nine, and then I do a rewatch of B5. So I enjoy this, and we're getting into the part of the series, like the Season 4, end of Season 3, Season 4 to the and then the race to the finish is probably my favorite parts of Deep Space Nine. So we're really getting into like the meat of what's to come in this, and it's absolutely fantastic that we are. And I think Facets is probably a good opening to the close of Season 3.
I completely agree. So real quick, storyline. Dax asked her friends to take part in a trill ritual where she meets with her previous hosts, who temporarily take over the minds of the friends. Meanwhile, Nog practices for his entry into Starfleet Academy, much to the disliking of his uncle. Shout out to Anonymous for a very quick but pretty on-point summary.
Yeah, Anonymous did really good here. I look forward to more Anonymous posts.
I hope so too.
Yep.
Oh, I'm seeing ads. Ew. Brave browser. What am I even using you for at this point?
All right. So,
this is an excellent episode that really gives us more lore into Star Trek species that we're still learning a lot about, particularly in this series. And this was probably, I think, one of the best things that they could have done in some. Just the concept itself is really cool. I already like this episode, and I enjoy rewatching it. I never get tired of it because it's just a really good episode all around. It's very concept driven, but it's also what they managed to do with it and build even more character development that you don't expect. It just really speaks to the quality of the writing of this show, and as well as the established universe that it sits in at this point in the Star Trek timeline, as far as when Star Trek was being released. Yeah, I absolutely still think this is one of the best episodes of Star Trek, and obviously of DS9, and it's just a really good, wholesome character development and lore building episode.
yeah, I mean, look, it's always fun to let your principal cast, especially after they've been playing them for 3+ years, be able to play off character type for their characters, right? You know, O'Brien is usually fairly self-assured, even if he's, you know, kind of meek, like mild-mannered about it. He's very self-assured. So having him play a character that doubts himself all the time was hilarious, right? Having the somewhat introverted Julian Bashir get to play an extremely extroverted character was great, and it was fun. And, you know, having Quark play a female character was just great. You know, there's nothing more you could say about that. It was fun. But let's be honest, the real standouts here are Sisko when he takes on Duran and Odo when he takes on Curzon. And when Sisko plays Duran, look, I didn't think, you know, like Sisko is always this fatherly figure. I mean, I've seen the actor play some serious characters. I've never seen him play somebody I would consider truly evil. And he does a fantastic job of it here. And then we have Odo taking on Curzon, which was a freaking fantastic idea and a lot of fun. I mean, I personally think that while the conceit of the episode, it does play well too, and, you know, for story reasons, I get it. I think I would have actually preferred to have seen Sisko take on Curzon. Like an alternate reality version of it, like being his own best friend would be a very amusing thing, right? And him getting to kind of walk a mile in Sisko's shoes would have been a fantastic piece.
Well,
but I do like what they did with Odo.
Yeah, but that wouldn't have really worked as well because it didn't work that way with them. It was because of Odo's physiology that it basically created Curzon Odo. And that's what I thought was also cool, was the fact that, because he's a changeling, it's going to affect him. You know, the memories just basically created a whole new person, essentially.
Yeah.
This
Perdo.
was but this was definitely a better way to handle the situation than a certain Star Trek Voyager episode, Tubix. Because in the end, you know, they realize that, okay, it's probably best that Curzon's memories do go back to inhabit Jadzia, and that's, you know, that's good, instead of, you know, forcing Odo and Curzon Odo to be disbanded and ripped apart. Like, it makes for a much better ending overall. And and so it's just this episode hits every right mark, between having O'Brien play a nervous guy, between Bashir all pompous, and that was all perfect, and Lita playing a gymnast. It was all, every character was obviously specially chosen for the personality type that would work, and then of course Quark just
nailed it, man. Look, the one thing I like,
I love the expression.
Does not get enough appreciation, man.
I love the expression on Quark's face before the credits roll, when she asks, "I need to borrow your bodies," and Quark, while everyone's astonished, is like, in that moment, he's all there for it. Like, for what?
He thought something freaky was going to happen on the holosuite, is what he thought was going to happen.
It's exactly what he's thinking. Like, that's the expression that he has through all that makeup, is just that, I like where this is going. And,
It was like, you know, like, in his mind, I think he was picturing 1 Trill and like 8 Klingons, you know, in the room kind of thing, all surrounding her. And he was like, yeah, I'm in for this.
No,
right?
remember they slice up their bodies and they sell them for money. So, oh my gosh, a Quark, you know, a Ferengi that had sex with a Trill.
Yeah, there you go, right?
Wow, that's a good point. They probably would value that type of shit too, as part of their valuation.
Well, I mean, it could, you know, or he could have been thinking, heck yeah, I'm about to make some money. I'm getting a rental agreement set up.
Yeah. No, it had a lot of funny moments, and it was a lot of fun, but also just a lot of really great character-driven moments. And we got to learn more about not just Dax, but also how the Dax symbiote works and everything. But, John, did you have any thoughts for this episode?
No, I just like, these episodes like this are fun because they're recognizing the amount of open types of like narrative, like storytelling that they can do when they create all these characters that have all these sci-fi hijinks. Like, at first it's like, cool, it's an alien. But then a lot of shows just go, and look at how human these aliens are. Look at that way you can appreciate why they ended the wars, because it turns out we're all alike. We're all just people in the universe. But like episodes like this are like, look at how not human they are. And I like that. I think that's always fun. And I think that's the part of sci-fi we need more of. So yeah, I like it. It was fun.
No, definitely. All right, well, that brings us, of course, to the last. We'll have to stretch the discussion on this a little bit. To the last episode of Season 3, and that is, of course, The Adversary. Cisco takes the Defiant to Zenkethi space. Whilst working on the ship, O'Brien hears strange sounds, and soon breakdowns and mishaps start occurring. Cisco believes one of those on board is causing what he or she appears to be, and the occurrences are acts of sabotage. Shout out to Arnold Teal. That particular one could use a little bit of work. So yeah, basically we start the episode right out of the gate with Cisco finally getting promoted to captain. And now, of course, we can stop catching ourselves when we say Captain Cisco by mistake as an inadvertent spoiler, because, well, now he's captain. Though it probably wasn't a big spoiler. John, being in the military, probably knew it was an inevitability, just a matter of when. So, John.
No, I was just surprised Star Trek, promoted a black guy to captain.
God.
Ooh. And actually, I'm gonna go with I'm gonna come right out of the gate here and go, there was a black captain in TOS. Just saying.
That's correct. There was, and that was actually, I think, part of the well, I don't think it was part. I don't remember. I think there was some controversy with Cisco being cast as the lead when there really shouldn't have been in the 90s. But
there wasn't an issue per se with Cisco being cast. I mean, there were the minor dissenters. There were other bigger controversies that happened in the series that caught more attention.
Yeah, I was gonna say in the 90s it should have just been like, something that was long overdue. But at this point, now he is officially a captain. He's
John had to yeet himself.
Yep. Now he's officially a captain. He has both command of a space station as well as a starship, and it just makes sense.
Yeah. And we finally get him to open a captain's log.
Best captain's log in all of Star Trek. Like,
yep.
The whole, he doesn't even start it as captain's log, and it's like, yeah, all I can think is captain's log, begin first entry.
Yep. No, look, this episode was freaking fantastic because it felt like the kind of drama / horror story you would expect on like a submarine, right? Because let's be honest, the Defiant is basically a submarine.
Yeah.
Right? And having it being cramped and hot and, the ship being out of control. I mean, you couldn't write a better submarine sci-fi story than this. And it just hit on every cylinder. Now, on top of that, we have the whole piece with Odo's people, right? Where, we know there's a changeling on board, but what the hell do we do about it? Right?
Yeah.
This sets so many, this is the piece we were waiting for, right? We knew when the Dominion first showed up, we were going to wind up in a conflict with them at some point, like a major conflict. This is the first real time they've made a move that we know about. And it's a pretty terrifying one when you think about it, right? Like, we'll have these two rivals slug it out to the death, and we'll go in and pick up the pieces afterwards, right? That's a fantastic move on their part, right? We have tech that, Dax and O'Brien, their response to it is, I don't know. Have we tried shooting it? Right? When Dax and O'Brien are like, I don't know, try shooting it kind of attitude, things have gotten bad, right? But they figure stuff out along the way. They're getting played for probably about 3/4 of the episode, really. And, they're constantly on the back foot trying to figure out how to deal with everything as they realize things are a problem. It was really, really well done in that regard, in that they pulled out these individual pieces, And, you start wondering, well, if I've got a dude on board this ship that can look like any of us, what do I do? How do I deal with that? Right. And, it has little pieces of John Carpenter's The Thing in there as well. Right.
Yeah,
Like, I'm reminded of the campfire scene from The Thing,
exactly.
where they're trying to figure out who is who. It was just, yeah. But Petey, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one too here.
Yeah, I mean, this is how you end a season without sending half of your fan base into a panic attack. Shout out to Best of Both Worlds. It's a very strong season finale that ends on a very poignant note of shit's actually just about to get real. It first of all, it sets up the tension of declaring war with an allied faction, which of course we don't want to do. And, bummer, we don't actually get to see the Zenkethi until, somewhere between
Season 8.
Yeah, Season 8. Yep, that's right. It was mostly the Herc in Season 8. But yes, we will see a bit of the Zenkethi in Season 8 when we get there. It's another well-written episode, and a very well-executed episode that you feel the tension throughout this entire drama. You don't want anything bad to happen to the crew, of course, but it's like, who do you trust? And they do a very good job of masking, the person that ends up being caught, which is ironic for reasons we can't discuss just yet. But yeah, I mean, everything you're saying on it is right. I mean, it puts emphasis on why DS9 is good, because every single season ender to DS9 is actually pretty solid. And even the series finale, I think, is fantastic. Yeah, all the seasons have solid endings. I will say that.
And pretty solid beginnings too.
Yeah, and then there's the shit sandwich that is season 7, but we'll get to that when we get there.
Yeah, well,
I know. It's worth it to the end, I think. I don't remember. It's been a while since I've watched this show, and each experience that you rewatch it is very different, especially when you have different experiences to influence how you look at things. And I don't know, it was just, this is the moment where it's like you remind yourself why you love this show. This is the moment on rewatches where you go, this is why I'm probably going to pick up DS9 again in, another 5 years or so. Is because it's definitely what I recommend as a writer. If you're wanting to write good space television, this is an excellent place to start. Because it gets everything. It doesn't get too technobabble heavy. It doesn't rely often on shitty MacGuffins to do things. It doesn't insult your intelligence at any point. DS9 has always respected its audience, and that's why it resonated so well, was because it had a balance between having enough conflict going on, but also still trying to get back to that Federation idealism. It's the reason why I call it peak Star Trek, because it takes the idealism of TNG and TOS, of that, utopia, everyone's working together future, and it shows a struggle to get to that through the eyes of the Bajorans, through the eyes of a commander who believes in the Federation's ideals, but is now going to be taken to task on all of them across the board. He's DS9 at this point is really not the best place to be in the galaxy. You have basically on the front lines, you're just waiting for the Dominion to come pouring out of the wormhole any day. And now, you have problems supposedly that are happening with the Zenkethi that turn out to be, oh no, it's just one changeling that manipulated an entire warship to leave its home port and go attack an ally. Like, that is not a small breach of security. That is a huge deal.
And also, I want to shout out to the guys who are writing Michael Eddington. He was fantastic in this episode.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Eddington's character throughout, because it was like, of course we suspect Eddington. He sabotaged the ship the first time, remember? But we have to remember, Sisko forgave him and gave him a second chance, and he redeemed himself. So, to say that he's doing it again would be incorrect. But I also appreciate how the crew doesn't just automatically assume Eddington, because they know that yeah, okay, once a saboteur, always a saboteur is a silly line of logic unless they prove it.
Yeah,
twice.
I mean, like, let's be honest, right? I mean, making Eddington the bad guy again would be ridiculous, right? Like, there's no way the show would do that.
No. We already seen it, and it would have been expected, right? But that would have been hilarious if the Changeling picked Eddington to swap out. And it's like, nah, dude, we were already suspicious of you from the second you said oops.
From jump.
Yeah. Second you stepped into the ship, we were like, hey, it's that Eddington guy. Remember what he did? He sabotaged us last time.
Yeah. Maybe we should phaser him just, for fun.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Hey, that's set on stun, right? Stun, right?
Sure.
Oops, pocket Death Star, blew a hole in the ship, killed us all, my bad.
Right. I mean, like, you gotta, that being said, man, phasers on stun sound like the craziest screwball idea. Like, I know dudes, I know dudes like 23 getting into the service kind of thing. You give them a phaser set on stun, dudes are going to get stunned.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to get stunned a lot.
Oh, yeah. No, you give it to any E5 supervisor, you give a phaser of any kind. I mean, it's just not. And then not to mention the vaporized setting can make it easy to get away with stuff, especially, if you're anywhere where there's no sensors. That's like, you're a pile of dirt now. Goodbye.
Oh, man. But yeah, like, honestly, this is one of those episodes that shows why Trek is really good. Because it can take a classic concept. Like, look, we joke around saying that Trek was like, Wagon Train to the Stars. Deep Space Nine is like a border town kind of show. And then we get a World War II submarine battle in the middle of or submarine drama in the middle of freaking nowhere.
Yeah, my favorite TOS episode. So, actually, you know what? Since we've got time to kill, I do want to bring up something with regards to Star Trek that I'll gladly put out there on YouTube record for tonight. And that is the argument of what a real Star Trek fan is. Now, I start simple with this one. If you like Star Trek from 1966 to present, you're a Star Trek fan. That's how it works. That's how easy it is to be a Star Trek fan. However, if you cannot respect the lore, the origins, if you cannot respect the creator. Now, I'm not saying kiss Roddenberry's ass. Absolutely, call the man out. Say that he's, the stuff that he did that was not good. That's just basic accountability. That's not disagreeing with people or disagreeing with their actions does not mean you disagree with their existence. And yet a lot of people take disagreement so damn personally. You can call out what Roddenberry's shortcomings. Absolutely. I call out the fact that people praise Star Trek 2 as being the best Star Trek movie ever made, and Roddenberry hated it. He wanted to destroy it. He went out of his way to try and torpedo it. But
dude, you want another?
Huh?
Oh, you want another really good one?
Sure.
When Roddenberry was creating the Ferengi as a species, in the initial treatment for the Ferengi, he also had that they were going to be exceptionally well endowed. Like, we're talking rocking out with like a couple of socks out, shall we say. And it took a team of Star Trek writers to convince him not to do this. Right? Like, he made some missteps, but the core concept was fantastic.
Right. This is this is where I draw the line as far as real fans. The first one being, if you can't respect the lore and the origins and the creator, you're not a fan. If you think that Star Trek was never good until 2017, you're not a fan. If you can't acknowledge TOS, you're not a fan. If you can't at least pick one episode of TOS that you can sit through, you don't have to like any episodes, but if there's at least one episode you can call, if you can't name a single TOS episode by memory, and at least describe a little what happens, I'd say that is grounds to consider you not a real Star Trek fan. Because in the end, there's no point if you can't respect the lore to even being interested in any of this. Because whether or not Discovery or even Strange New Worlds properly honor the lore, that doesn't excuse anybody else who fails to. That doesn't excuse behavior from whether you're a diehard Roddenberry fan, a member of the 735 Club, or you are it's okay to have 2017 plus Trek be your favorite. That's not a problem. It is perfectly okay to say you like Discovery more than TOS. I don't agree with it, and I might think that you're probably, probably in need of a brain examination, and I'd be happy to pick it here on this show. But I'm not going to be the person that says you're not a Star Trek fan. I'm going to be the one that says you are, and if you do things that go counter to the Star Trek lore, I'm also going to call it out. Because, again, if you can't follow what the shows and ideas guidelines were, again, why are you doing it? What's the point? So that's what, for me, a real Star Trek fan. If you like Star Trek, you want to try getting into Star Trek, congratulations. You're a fan, you could try to get into it, you absolutely should. And so with that said, of course, to prove my own fandom, sorry, mouth's a little dry. My favorite TOS episode is hands down Balance of Terror. And it's very similar to this particular episode, very similarly inspired, except instead of, two ships fighting each other underwater, we're just dealing with one fighting itself internally. But what I enjoy about Balance of Terror is the constant back and forth between the Enterprise and the Romulans. And, ultimately it's two captains that are just trying to look out for their crews. And they're placing them first, and then in the end they realize that they're probably more similar than not. And everything about that is what hits every right mark in TOS for me. And that's probably why I also like this episode too, is because it's a similar it's actually pretty much the same situation, because the Saboteur is from the Changelings, and the Changelings are super paranoid and insecure about anybody that isn't them. And so this Changeling isn't necessarily trying to cause a war because they hate the humans and they want to exterminate them all. They're trying to cause a war because they're convinced that that's what's going to keep them protected. And, of course, they fail, but in the process, he decides to spill the beans that, oh yeah, we're everywhere. Well, even then, I don't think it would have made a difference on Starfleet's security policy going forward, because they would have just simply recognized that, oh yeah, we're going to need to beef up security because we just had a Changeling totally infiltrate our station and almost cause our ship to start a war. So,
yeah, we just had a Changeling make us look like clowns.
Right. What is your favorite TOS episode anyway?
There are a few that really, really hit.
Feel free to name them all.
The Doomsday Machine is definitely up there.
That's a good one.
Right. And you'll have to excuse me because I do not remember the names of some of these episodes, so I do apologize, but I will run through them, right? The one where Kirk arms a population with flintlocks because the Klingons are doing the same thing on the other side, and he's trying to maintain the balance of power on the planet. That one is a particularly fantastic one. The original Mirror Universe episode is freaking great.
Mirror.
Mirror, that's the one. And there's another one where they go to an alternate Earth that is run, that the Romans are still in charge. That one's another high one on my list. Who Mourns Adonis is another fantastic one for me. I thought it was very, very good. Those are the big ones for me. But look, there is maybe 3 original episodes that I felt are a misstep, right? Like maybe 3. I really enjoyed them all. And like for next gen, it's easier for me to mention the episodes that I didn't like more than the episodes I liked.
Yeah,
'cause there were
funny
so
how
many
that
on the
show
list.
works that way, huh?
Right? And you know, and like Voyager, I can even find fantastic episodes in, right? It's you know, it's not until we get to Discovery era or Picard era where I sit there going, you know, there are seasons where I have issues. Like not just like episodes I have issues, but seasons.
Yeah, it's really sad how much Star Trek has had to go through the mud, but it's like I'm looking at this now post and I'm you know, after the fact, and I'm going, this was inevitable. You
Yeah,
know,
I mean-
eventually the bad ideas were going to come out. The bad ideas were just existing. It was just a matter of time before, you know, Star Trek fell victim. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that doesn't excuse it. I mean, we obviously
No.
expect better, and we need to get back to, you know, DS9 season 3.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's you know, there are absolutely fantastic ideas and concepts that come out in Trek. And I do have a bit of a concern that perhaps Trek as a concept has gone on too long, and that's why we're getting seasons with problems instead of like episodes that just didn't click, right? And for the record, the episodes that I think didn't click, I am sure click for somebody, just not me, right? But when we get into like, for example, Picard season 2, like I know I watched Picard season 2, but I think I mentally blocked it all for my own safety. Right? Like I have proof I've watched the episodes. I just can't tell you anything about them because I had to shut down mentally to be able to view it. And you know, Deep Space Nine never has that, right? There is not even the episodes that I really don't like, right? Like I'm sorry, man. As much as like you and John are like, no, you know, Runaway Home isn't that bad. To me, no, it's still the worst, right? It's still the worst the series has to offer. Even that, that being said, the worst is still not that bad, right?
I'm still Invasive Procedures is without a doubt the worst episode of DS9 and
Okay.
and Star Trek as a whole. It's definitely in one of the worst of all time. Because yeah, as cheesy as Run Along Home is, Run Along Home doesn't really have a whole lot of rapey vibes to it. So
yeah, well, Invasive Procedures definitely has that. It definitely has, you know, like a lot of darker stuff in it. But
well, and it's all just poorly
man.
executed too.
Yeah, but Tim Russ is a Klingon. Like, right?
Well, it was before Voyager, you know. He was still trying to figure out what he was going to be when he grew up.
Yeah, well, fair enough, right? I mean, you know, it's like Ernie Coombs, right? Like I always assume that Mr. Coombs is actually all of those characters. He's just like a rogue changeling, and he just jumps between roles, right?
Oh, you mean Jeffrey Combs?
Or Jeffrey Combs, yeah.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Combs, it's actually just a changeling that he jumps between all of them.
I mean, that would have been a whole different kind of plot device to work with there. You know, that the changelings have one of their own that poses as a Vorta that apparently dies. I mean, damn. I think you somehow managed to make DS9 better when it didn't even need to be.
Dude, that's what I do here, man. I make writing better. That's what I exist to
Almost
do.
like our channel's named as a writer in it or something.
Yeah, weird that, huh?
Yeah,
So-
totally. Well, we apparently have 10 more minutes of broadcast time, but, I mean, through the magic of TV and the fact that it's not even our normal broadcast day, I could very much fast forward the credits to roll in just about, you know, almost now, or we can, unless there's a topic we could stretch for 10 minutes.
Well,
Fine
I
either
did
way.
just want to put some thoughts out into the crowd's head so that maybe they can leave some comments on the video. You know, we've got plenty of stuff coming up in the next little while that potentially could be worth us reviewing, right? Like, for example, I'm really, really jazzed about Invincible Season 2. right? I thought it was a fantastic. Invincible season 1 was fantastic. I would love to do a review of Invincible for the Writer Brothers if we're down for it. Or would you guys rather us focus on something else, right? Like, I'd love to hear what thoughts on series that we can bring to the table. I mean, I assume we're going to review Ahsoka.
Oh yeah, Ahsoka is for sure happening on our show, and let's see. Nemesis of Eden says Invincible season 2 is going to be amazing. Hopefully, well, that's one listener that's interested in Invincible.
And
so I need to catch
Nemesis
up on
of Eden
1.
is a gentleman of extreme taste and quality, as far as I'm concerned. So.
I agree. Yes, a channel member on your channel and a future channel member here. I assume.
We can hope, right? Nemesis of Eden, what I can say is I own the entire series of Invincible, the comic book run. And if they follow roughly the way the comic book has, we're about to get into some really cool stuff. So, get ready for some coolness. If you like Alan the Alien, you're going to love this next season.
Wrong button. I know how to run this show.
Yep.
Yeah, it's because of the writer strike. We're definitely going to have a gap in the future. So that we're definitely going to. So any of you that have been requesting classic content, I know some people from our sister network are curious about us picking up Last of Us, which I heard was actually good. And so maybe not a terrible idea to do the show, or maybe a special on that. But we're also not opposed. We are open to other suggestions, though. For just about anything.
Well, I mean, given what happened the last time a group of YouTubers tried to cover The Last of Us, I'm pretty hesitant.
Fair.
Right? But I was going to suggest that if we do some classic stuff, we could look at Babylon 5.
I'm definitely not opposed to Babylon 5, especially now that we're like this deep into DS9 and we've been getting faster. Nemesis of Eden writes in, "You flatter me, sir. That's awesome that you own all of Invincible. I'm really excited at Choreo, which so I think that kind of decides it there. When is the second season supposed to drop?
November.
Okay, so we got time. Good.
Yeah, so I mean, it'll give us time to catch up on season 1 and
catch up on that, and then we do have Ahsoka starting this month with a 2-episode premiere at the end of the month, and so I'm cautiously optimistic about that. It would just be better, if Kennedy's either confirmed window seated or fired. But then again, if Lucasfilm gets sold to Apple, then her contract is null and void regardless. So I don't think Apple has any intention of keeping her around.
Yeah, and I'm also going to say this. Board meetings like we had here with the investors call, usually massive, big firing moves happen in the days following. So I would say look at Friday and Monday as big news days for Disney coming up.
And of course, yes, if we get the word that KK has been fired, we are pretty much going live within the hour to celebrate that and discuss that. And of course, continue to put our and then of course we're going to start our party, but we're also going to continue to push our expectations going forward, and the fact that we don't want, I don't care if people want to share their message and format it, but you need to be respectful to the audience and you need to respect the source material. And that's why, we're adamant about Lucasfilm having a quick changing of the guard, is because the people who have been in charge of the IP have not been respectful at all. We've actually heard rumblings on the inside that people have been fired because they refuse to do tasks that involve talking about why Luke Skywalker is an important character and an important part of Star Wars forever. Some have followed through on it, but others have just been like, hey, I don't want to write that. And it's very telling. It's like, again, back to the Star Trek thing. If you cannot respect the original trilogy and the creators, or even acknowledge the characters, what are you doing here? Why are you here? You're like that poser fanboy that has no idea what they are talking about, and yet claims to be a diehard fan of whatever, and yet you're not, because you just want to fit in. And that's what's really stupid about those types of people, is to fit in with a fandom. All you have to do is watch the shows. It's not that hard to become a fan, especially these days. Everything is streaming. Learn the shows by watching them, but actually watch them. Okay? I don't have a problem with fair weather fans. When it comes to Doctor Who, I never got super into it. I dressed up as the Doctor one year for Fantasy Fest in Key West, but I'm a fanboy. I'm not a diehard. I respect the fact that, you know, if I had the opportunity to meet David Tennant, I'd probably pass that opportunity to somebody else who was much more of a 10th Doctor fanboy than me. Because I'd love to meet David Tennant. I think he's a talented actor. But in a Doctor Who setting, I would appreciate it if somebody who wasn't as big a Star Trek fan gave me a chance to meet Avery Brooks. That's where I'm coming from. Is like, I recognize that other people are more excited for Doctor Who than I ever will be. And that is okay. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you don't ever watch the show, if you just read Wikipedia articles, and if you just say crap to try and fit in, we will see right through you, and you're not going to last long on YouTube lying. So, it's not that hard to be authentic.
I'm also going to put this out there. Look, there are a lot of people that complain when they go to, and I see this complaint a lot from young women, when they go to, say, the comic book shop and they're talking about what their favorite comic book is. Like, let's say it's Green Lantern, as an example. And somebody will comment about the lines of, oh, did you read Green Lantern 252 where this happened? What did you think? They're not quizzing you because they're questioning your credentials.
Right.
They're quizzing you because they're trying to establish common ground. They want to know where you are in the fandom, what your preferred thing is. It would be like, it was like what PD said here. When we were talking about original series, he goes, what's your favorite episodes? Right? Because he wants to know where I stand on it, right? He wants to understand that because that's, you know, how he can understand where I relate into the fandom for him. It's the same idea here. So don't be offended when they're asking questions because they're trying to engage with you.
And don't be afraid to say, I don't know, or I haven't explored that part. People are going to have more respect for you if you're honest about not knowing something and admitting that you don't know it than they will if you try to fake an answer and fail. Like me, I don't have time for that shit. And I'm not going to judge or think somebody less of them just because they don't know the difference of warp capabilities between a Constitution-class starship and an Excelsior-class starship. Excelsior's faster, by the way. That's my knowledge for my fun and what I get out of it. If somebody else doesn't know that, you're not a real fan.
Well, I will say this. Yes, the Excelsior is technically faster, unless it's sabotaged by a certain Scottish engineer.
That's correct, from the Enterprise. Yes, unless an Enterprise engineer is on the Excelsior is considerably faster. That is correct, sir.
Now, but what I was going to say is, like, you know, and I'm going to say this, for any single ladies who may be watching, and I know you are, if you ever want to pick up a geek boy, find out what he geeks about, and say to him, you know, take me to Invincible School, take me to Battletech School, right? They will, you know, they will give you the nitty-gritty details of everything about it, but they will be so enamored by the fact that you just asked that you will have a friend for life if you want them. Okay?
But here's the trick. You have to try and at least get into the lore. You can't pull a Stella from How I Met Your Mother and pretend to like Star Wars for so long, because it just, as we saw in that show, the relationship didn't last because, one, the love wasn't there, and two, she tried to fake it, and it just, you know, Star Wars was that important to Ted. And that's just it. Fandoms, don't compromise. Don't ever, regardless of whether you're male, female, do not snub your fandoms just because you're significant, someone you might think is a significant other. That is not healthy. Your significant other should appreciate the things that you enjoy and at least support that you appreciate them. Like, H. Marie loves Bob's Burgers. It's not really my thing. I don't hate the show. I can enjoy it. But I don't belittle her or demean her for liking it and loving it more than I do. And there's stuff that I like that she's just not into. And that's life. That's just how it goes. But you do have to at least try. And it's okay to say, you know what? It's not really for me, but I appreciate that you enjoy it, and, you know, just don't make me watch it every day. Anyway.
And, you know,
all right. We are now actually out of time at this point. So, thank you to everybody who tuned in, whether you're watching a replay, whether you're watching live, whether you're lurking, whatever. We appreciate all the support from everybody who tunes into this show one way or the other. We absolutely enjoy doing it. and we want to keep doing it, and hopefully, barring any more computer problems, we'll continue to be able to put more streams. But hey, we made it a whole 2 hours on a talk show, so if I have to cancel the game streams, that's going to suck and be boring, but I can at least put my face out here for all of you to see. And you'll have to wait until next week to see it. This has been a presentation of the Writer Brothers Tuesday night live show on a Wednesday. The Writer Brothers, restoring respect in a discourse.